At my brother's $50,000 wedding, my parents handed him the house I grew up in, the same one they kicked me out of at 18. I wasn't even on the guest list until my grandma said she wouldn't come. When I finally walked in, my mother took me aside, smiled, and whispered, "Don't make us look bad today." I grinned back. Because she had no clue what I brought with me. I never thought being disowned could feel like a calculated move. But when my parents gave my childhood home to my brother as a wedding gift, years after kicking me out at 18, I realized they weren't just erasing me from their lives, they were rewriting history. And I was about to rewrite it back. The wedding venue was lavish, all white marble and gold chandeliers, but as my mother, Sarah, spotted me across the room, her forced smile felt colder than the air conditioning. She approached, her voice a soft, venomous whisper, "Noah, I'm glad you could make it. Just try not to embarrass us today, all right?" She had no idea what I'd truly brought with me. That interaction, that subtle jab, it perfectly encapsulated everything I'd come to expect. I'm Noah, and I'm 29 now, but I was 18 when I moved out. Or, more accurately, when I was pushed out. It wasn't about chasing independence or some big dream. My parents just made it clear there was no place for me. "Time to learn how the world works," they said. "Man up, make it on your own." Those were their words, not mine. I didn't argue. I just packed what I could into a beat-up sedan, paid for with pizza delivery money, and left. No graduation party, no teary goodbyes, no offers of help. Just the quiet click of a closing door behind me. My brother, Liam, 3 years my junior, had a completely different childhood. He was their golden boy. Athletic, charming, always the center of attention. He literally could do no wrong. If I got home late from my job, I was irresponsible. Liam missed curfew? Oh, he just lost track of time, needed his rest. A B+ on my math test meant, "What did you do wrong?" Liam brought home a C, and they'd chuckle, "Not everyone's a numbers guy." You get the picture. He wasn't just the favorite, he was the only one they truly invested in. New clothes, a car for his 18th birthday, tutoring, sports camps. I, on the other hand, bought my first laptop with 3 months of saved tips. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. It was just how things were. Maybe they related to Liam better. Maybe I didn't fit their mold, and that was on me. So, I poured everything into building my own life. Long hours, night classes, even skipping meals to save money, it was relentless. By 22, my buddy Sam and I had launched our own small business, and slowly, painstakingly, things began to turn around. It wasn't easy, but I made it work. By 26, I had 3 full-time employees. By 28, I was investing in real estate. None of this success was shared with my family. Not out of spite, but because they never asked. Our contact was superficial, a birthday text, a forwarded meme, the occasional group chat message. I'd see photos of Liam with my parents at fancy dinners or on vacations, places they never took me. I remained cordial, but distant. Not bitter, just done trying. The real turning point came a few months ago, with a call from my grandmother, Eleanor. She's one of the few family members who ever showed me unconditional warmth. She told me Liam was getting married. A huge event, booked venue, 5-course meal, custom florals, straight out of a magazine. I just said I was happy for him, but something felt off. "Eleanor," I asked, "when's the wedding?" A pause stretched, a beat too long. Then, "Oh, I assumed they told you." "It's June 10th, invitations went out last week." I hadn't received one. "Maybe yours got lost in the mail," she added quickly, her voice a pitch higher. "You know how the post office is." I could hear the strain, her trying to excuse something she clearly didn't agree with. I knew instantly. It wasn't lost. I wasn't on the list. Not even a courtesy invite. I didn't press. I just thanked her, wished her a good evening, and hung up. The next day, she called again, a new edge in her voice. "Noah," she said, "I talked to your mother, Sarah. And I told her, if you're not invited, I'm not going. Your grandfather, Arthur, agrees. We're not going to stand around pretending this family is whole when they keep cutting you out." That meant the world to me. Eleanor wasn't one to stir trouble, but when something truly bothered her, she spoke up. Sure enough, 3 days later, a last-minute invitation arrived. One of those generic ones, pre-printed names, mass-produced gold foil. No note, no call, just a card shoved into a cheap white envelope, like checking a box. I almost didn't go, but something inside me nudged. It wasn't just the late invite, or being a clear afterthought. It was the deeper truth. After all these years, after building my life from scratch, I was still the outsider. The one they wanted hidden, kept in the shadows of their perfect family portrait. Yet now, because Eleanor made a fuss, they'd slap a band-aid on it, pretending I was part of the celebration. As if a last-minute invite would make me forget everything. Then came another call, this time from my cousin, who was helping with the wedding setup. She was on speakerphone with another cousin, talking casually when something she said made my stomach drop. "Can you believe Liam and Chloe are getting the house?" Like, the actual house? The one they grew up in, the one I grew up in? The other cousin chimed in, "Yeah, your aunt said they're handing over the deed as a wedding gift." Isn't that wild? They could have sold it for $500,000 easy, but I guess it's keeping it in the family. I didn't say a word. I just listened until they finished, then hung up. I sat there, staring at the wall, piecing it all together. They hadn't just kicked me out at 18. They were giving my brother the house as a wedding gift. The same house I wasn't welcome in after high school. The one I'd snuck back into months later for a photo album, only to be yelled at for trespassing. That house had been erased from my life, and now it was gift-wrapped for the golden child. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anger, but from a quiet, burning clarity. Sometimes, the fog lifts. The years of pretending things are okay suddenly peel away, and all the patterns become visible at once. This was one of those moments. All the childhood slights, the excuses, the small humiliations, they rushed back, but with new context. This wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just how things were. It was a deliberate pattern, a choice, repeated over and over. So, I made a choice too. I would go to that wedding. Not for them, not even for Eleanor, but because I had something to bring, something they weren't expecting. When I finally walked into that 5-star venue in my tailored navy suit, a few heads turned. My cousin gave a small smile. Eleanor looked relieved. My mother, Sarah, spotted me, forcing a smile so tight her cheekbones twitched. She approached, tilted her head, and in the softest, fakest tone I'd ever heard, said, "Noah, I'm glad you could make it. Just try not to embarrass us today, all right?" I smiled back. She had no idea. That single sentence, "try not to embarrass us," it was painfully predictable. It captured her perfectly, veiled control, artificial. Politeness, a total inability to see her own hypocrisy. I just smiled, silent, but inside, something cracked. Clean, cold, permanent. Not a loud, confrontational anger, but a quiet, surgical one. The kind that builds from years of wounds refusing to close. The venue was straight out of a luxury catalog, white marble, gold chandeliers, a string quartet playing elegant, forgettable music. Guests sipped champagne, posing by a floral arch that probably cost more than my first car. Everyone was dressed to the nines, everyone but me seemed comfortable. I moved slowly, deliberately, observing. Liam, in his custom tux, laughed with his groomsmen. His bride, Chloe, posed for photos, all smiles and perfect posture. She was beautiful, undeniably, the kind of elegant magazines rave about. But she had my mother's same polished, practiced expression. Performative kindness, a layer of cold steel beneath. I found Eleanor and Arthur at a corner table. They looked relieved, but their smiles held a familiar sadness. "I'm glad you came," Eleanor whispered, hugging me. "They can pretend all they want, but you belong here as much as anyone." Arthur just squeezed my shoulder. He says little these days, but his silence speaks volumes. The ceremony began shortly after, white chairs, a perfect aisle, petals scattered by a flower girl who looked overcoached. The officiant delivered the kind of poetic emptiness weddings thrive on: love, family, unity. My face was still, but my mind drifted. Family. They say blood is thicker than water, but what they don't say is water doesn't pretend. Water doesn't smile in your face while replacing you. After the vows, the real party began. Cocktail hour into dinner, then speeches. I sat at a back table with cousins I barely knew, making awkward small talk. Mostly, I just watched. My father spoke first, confidently, glass in hand. To my son, he announced, the one who made me proud every step of the way. I blinked. A simple sentence, but it hit like a brick to the chest. Every step of the way? As if I didn't exist, as if he hadn't raised 2 sons, as if Liam was the only one worth remembering. Polite laughter, warm applause followed. My pulse throbbed behind my eyes. Chloe's father spoke next, then the maid of honor, then Liam. Each told stories of triumph, loyalty, support, anecdotes from a scrapbook of golden memories. My entire existence had been edited out, a deleted scene that didn't test well. Then came the announcement that broke something deep inside. It was subtle, a casual mention slipped into the end of Liam's speech, almost an afterthought. "I can't thank my parents enough for everything, including, well, this still feels unreal, giving us the house I grew up in." Applause. Smiles. Gasps of admiration. Guests turned to my parents, glowing like royalty. I didn't clap. I didn't blink. While everyone else heard a sweet gesture of family generosity, I heard a door slamming in my face. Again. Let me be clear, I never expected the house. I never wanted it. It wasn't about the property. It was about what it symbolized. I'd been discarded from that home like a broken toy. Now, it was being handed to the one they'd always saved everything for. I got up and walked outside. The evening air was cooler than I expected. I took deep breaths, pacing near the garden path. I didn't cry, I hadn't in a long time. But a tightness in my chest felt unfamiliar, grief mixed with something sharper. Leaning against a marble column, I tried to collect myself. Then I heard footsteps. It was Sarah, her heels clicking on the stone. "Noah," she said, placing a hand lightly on my arm. "Are you okay? You seemed off during the speeches." I turned slowly. "You didn't tell me about the house," I said, voice flat. She blinked. "Well, we weren't sure it would be the right time to know," I cut in. "You just didn't want me to know until it was too late to matter." She sighed, exasperated. "This isn't about you, Noah. Don't make it about you. This is Liam's day." I stared, stunned. Not by her words, but that she believed them. She really thought I was making things difficult, selfish for reacting to being erased. "I'm not trying to ruin his day," I said slowly. "But you gave him the house. The same one you kicked me out of. Do you not see how that might feel? Cruel." Her smile returned, thin and sharp. "We didn't kick you out. You were a man. It was time to stand on your own. I was 18. Exactly. Old enough." I shook my head. "So what's different with Liam? Why didn't he have to stand on his own?" She tilted her head like she was speaking to a child. "Because he's different. He's always needed a little more support. And he gave us something to be proud of." There it was. The knife twisted, without flinching. I stepped back from her touch. She must have seen my expression shift, because her tone turned icy. Noah, I understand this is hard for you, but you've made your choices. You left. You built your own life. You should be happy for your brother. I stared at her for a long moment, then asked something I hadn't realized I needed to until that moment. Why didn't you ever come visit me? She blinked. What? All those years? All those birthdays? Not once. Not one visit, not one dinner. What? She looked uncomfortable, glancing around. We were busy. Life got complicated. I let the silence hang. You just didn't want to see me succeed without you, I said quietly. You didn't want the reminder that I did what you said I couldn't. Her face hardened. That's enough. No, I said, stepping closer, my voice still calm. You know what's enough? Me pretending any of this ever mattered to you. I came to be civil, but let's not lie anymore. You never wanted me here. You wanted a photo op. You wanted to keep Eleanor quiet. She tried to interrupt, but I raised a hand. I'm done pretending I'm the problem. I've worked too hard. I've built too much. I didn't need your house. I didn't need your help. But I deserved better than this. She folded her arms, defensive. You don't get to come here and lecture me on what you think you deserved. No, I said. But I do get to remind you that you raised 2 sons. One, you handed everything to. The other, you threw out, and he's the one you underestimated. She scoffed, turned on her heel, and walked back inside without another word. I stayed out there, the wind tugging at my jacket. Something had shifted inside me. I couldn't go back in and fake a smile through the reception. Not after that. But I wasn't done either. Because I hadn't just brought myself to the wedding. I'd brought something else. A folder. A single manila folder, tucked carefully inside my jacket. In that folder was something my parents hadn't anticipated. Something I'd worked on in silence for 6 months, ever since I started buying property in our hometown. Something with the power to unravel the perfect little lie they'd built. I reached into my jacket, tracing the edge of it, just to remind myself it was real. They wanted a perfect wedding. They were about to get something else entirely. And I hadn't even made my move yet. I didn't go back into the reception hall after that. Not just from anger, though it was there. But because I finally understood something I'd spent years ignoring. I didn't belong in that world. Not their version of it. I stood under the garden lights, listening to the muffled laughter and clinking glasses. My childhood home had been gift-wrapped, handed off like a party favor. And I was expected to smile, clap, pose, pretend. But pretending eventually breaks you. I walked to my car, alone. No goodbyes, no hugs, not even a text. Just silence. The kind that used to crush me, making me question if I was the problem. But this time, it was different. This silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Because I was done waiting for their approval. I was finally ready to focus on what I was building. For weeks after the wedding, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside, leaving just a shell to keep moving. I went through the motions, office, contracts, emails. But I was distracted, numb. It wasn't just the house that hurt. It was the finality. The crushing realization they wouldn't change. No secret version of my parents waiting to appear, to say they were proud. That fantasy was gone. I spent late nights in my office, just sitting in the dark, thinking. Thinking about that 18-year-old kid, packing his life into 2 duffel bags, driving off with no roadmap, just this burning need to prove something. That version of me hadn't expected luxury. He just wanted to matter. I wish I could say there was some lightning bolt of clarity, a big dramatic turning point. But there wasn't. Just small, quiet choices slowly reshaping my world. Like the morning I showed up early at our main property, the one I'd renovated from a crumbling duplex into 6 high-end studio apartments. An older tenant, Frank, was out front, struggling with a busted grocery bag rolling across the sidewalk. I picked them up without thinking. He thanked me, then asked, "You the owner?" "Yeah," I said, brushing off my jeans. He looked surprised. "Huh? You're younger than I figured." We chatted briefly. Nothing deep. But before he went upstairs, he turned and said, "Place is nice. People here feel safe." That means something, kid. It stuck with me. That night, I pulled out an old notebook, stained, battered, filled with messy handwriting and long-abandoned goals. I flipped through early business ideas, budget breakdowns, scribbled mantras. One line near the back caught my eye, circled 3 times in red, "Build the life they said you couldn't." I sat with that for a while. They hadn't just doubted me. They'd erased me. So, I started rewriting the story. First, I called Sam, my college roommate turned business partner. We'd co-founded our real estate company in our mid-20s, just a couple of guys with drive, stubbornness, and barely enough cash for our first foreclosure. We'd expanded slowly, carefully, but I'd always held back, played it safe, stayed under the radar. Not anymore. "Let's go big," I told him. "Define big," he laughed. 5 more properties by the end of the year. "I'll handle the capital. You find the listings." He didn't ask questions, just said, "I'm in." I took every hard-learned lesson, every rejection, every mistake, every humiliating stumble, and used it as fuel. Late nights, running numbers, meeting contractors at dawn. Calls during lunch, working weekends, skipping parties. I wasn't running from something anymore. I was running towards something, a version of myself that didn't need their permission to succeed. Slowly, things shifted. We landed a warehouse-to-loft conversion downtown. Then a neglected motel I turned into affordable micro-units. Then a small strip mall, leased to local businesses, coffee shops, barbers, a daycare. I hired staff, set up a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs. I even started anonymously donating to organizations that helped kids aging out of foster care find housing and jobs, because I knew what it felt like to have nowhere to go. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on Liam and Chloe, not obsessively, but enough. They moved into the house a month after the wedding. Repainted it, new kitchen. Chloe started a blog about modernizing heritage spaces. All very curated, very on brand. I didn't follow her Instagram, but mutual acquaintances kept sending me posts. Each one felt like a little jab. Family brunches on the porch, captioned, "Love our forever home." A throwback photo of Liam and me as kids, cropped so I was barely visible. Surreal, watching someone else turn my childhood into their aesthetic. 6 months after the wedding, I drove past the house. Not on purpose, it was just on the way back from a property inspection. I slowed down instinctively. Porch lights on. Chloe's SUV in the driveway. For a moment, I sat there, staring at the same steps I used to sit on as a kid, watching stars because the inside never felt safe. The same sidewalk where I scraped my knees learning to ride a bike. The same lawn I mowed every week, even in scorching July. I wasn't bitter. I was just aware. Aware of how far I'd come, and how little they'd noticed. That awareness crystallized one morning with a call from my father, the first direct communication since the wedding. No hello, no small talk. Just, "Your grandmother's birthday dinner is Saturday. Don't make it awkward." I paused. "Awkward how?" "You know what I mean," he huffed. "It's a family gathering. Let's not make it about you." I almost laughed. "Don't make it about the fact you gave away the house you kicked me out of, and haven't acknowledged me in 6 months?" Silence. "Don't be dramatic, Noah," he finally said. "We're all trying to move forward." No apology, no ownership. Just the same expectation, fall in line. Be quiet. Show up. Smile. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. I went to that dinner, but not for him. I went for Eleanor. She still called every few weeks, sent birthday cards in her handwriting, remembered my favorite pie. I showed up with flowers and her favorite wine. And I walked into the same house I'd once considered a prison. It had changed. The layout was familiar, but the walls were repainted, furniture different, the smell unfamiliar. Yet, in that foyer, old memories flooded back like ghosts, dinners where I couldn't speak unless spoken to, silent car rides with my father after report cards, birthdays with store-brand cake while Liam got rented inflatables and photographers. The dinner was polite, stiff. Liam greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Chloe barely acknowledged me. My parents acted as if nothing had happened, offering me a seat like a distant relative who'd RSVP'd late. Halfway through, my father raised a toast, to family, he said, lifting his glass, to what matters most. I didn't raise mine. I'd already found what mattered most. And it wasn't sitting around that table. What none of them knew, not Liam, not Chloe, not even my parents, was that in the 6 months since the wedding, I'd done something I never thought I would. I bought the land directly behind their backyard, a half-acre parcel that belonged to an elderly neighbor who'd moved to Arizona. It went on the market quietly, I scooped it up through a shell company. No one questioned it. No one noticed. But they would. Because what I had planned wasn't just business. It was personal. As I watched my mother refill Liam's wine glass, laughing at a sitcom joke he'd stolen, I realized something with perfect clarity: they'd spent their lives building a fantasy where I didn't exist. It was time to remind them I did. And I wasn't finished yet. They say revenge is best served cold. I disagree. I think it's best served prepared. And that's exactly what I spent the next several months doing. The night of Eleanor's birthday dinner, I sat alone in my condo, overlooking the city skyline, watching the lights flicker. It was late, past midnight, but my mind was wide awake, running through everything like a chessboard. The lies, the erasure, the house, the speech. Sarah's words echoing in my head, "Try not to embarrass us today." I smiled. She had no idea. While they played pretend in their perfect little world, I'd been building mine, brick by brick. And now, with everything in place, it was time to set the pieces. Slowly, carefully, quietly. Because the key to clean revenge isn't force. It's timing. You don't slam the door. You let them walk through it, smiling, completely unaware there's no floor on the other side. Let me back up. The property behind the house, my old house, had always been a weird sliver of land, technically part of a larger lot subdivided decades ago. Untouched since the 90s, a shed, some trees, a bit of fence. I used to toss a football back there with Liam, before he decided I wasn't cool enough to be his brother. The old owner, Mr. Hayes, passed away right after the wedding. His daughter, living in Phoenix, didn't want the hassle. A quiet real estate agent listed the land without fanfare. I saw it the morning it hit the private MLS and sent an offer before lunch, cash, no contingencies. It was mine by week's end. From the back porch of what Liam now called his forever home, you could see it if you knew what to look for. Most wouldn't notice. That was the point. Over the next few weeks, I incorporated a new, generic development LLC. Then, I reached out to a local architectural firm. I wanted something small, modern, eye-catching. A design pushing zoning boundaries, right up to legal limits in size and style. Make it bold, I told them. Make it loud. I want this to stand out. When they asked about the neighboring property, I just smiled. I'm not worried about the neighbors. The plan? A 3-story modernist duplex, sleek black steel, glass balconies, rooftop terraces. Zero lot line setback on the side facing Liam and Chloe's heritage home, massive windows, floodlights, a rooftop garden staring directly into their master bedroom. And since the zoning was mixed use, I proposed a coffee and wine bar on the bottom floor, just to stir things up. My parents wouldn't say anything publicly, that would mean admitting they gave the house to someone who didn't even own the full view. But Liam? Liam would snap. He always did when things didn't go his way. His temper wasn't explosive, but entitled, bubbling under the surface, leaking as sarcasm or passive aggression. He couldn't stand not controlling the narrative. Which is why I didn't stop there. I started attending city council meetings, quietly listening, asking about noise ordinances, parking permits, commercial foot traffic. I didn't need permits yet, I just wanted them to see my face, remember my name. Meanwhile, I reached out to an old contact, Vivian, who ran a local wedding venue. We'd met years ago when I rented her event space for a real estate seminar. She liked me, said I reminded her of her nephew, but with better manners. Her venue, beautiful as it was, had been struggling. I called her, what if we host exclusive pre-wedding pop-ups at my new property? Styled shoots, vendor showcases, micro-weddings under 40 people, and split the revenue? She was intrigued. I didn't even need the building finished yet, I just needed the idea to gain traction. Within a month, we had mock-ups, interest lists, vendors lined up, florists, caterers, even a string quartet. I called the concept the atrium. Vivian loved it. More importantly, so did Instagram. I created an entire digital brand, logo, color palette, minimalist aesthetics, a fake waitlist, a press release about luxury microvenues. I paid a lifestyle blogger to post a teaser shot from the build site, finally, a modern venue that doesn't feel like a barn or country club. You'd be amazed how fast a whisper turns into an echo. By the 4th month, the city was buzzing. And Liam still had no clue. Until Chloe saw the surveyors in their backyard. Later that night, I got a text from my cousin, Ben, bro, Liam's losing it. Says there's construction behind the house. New build? He thinks it's a shopping plaza or some nightmare, lol. I didn't reply. Just let it simmer. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Liam. I hadn't heard his voice directly since the wedding. He didn't even say hello. Hey, are you involved with that property behind the house? Straight to the point. I admired that, at least. My tone was neutral. I might be. You might be? Well, I own it. So, yeah. I suppose I am. Silence. What are you building? Mixed-use duplex. Commercial space. It's all public record. Noah, you're putting a business back there? Yep. Wine bar. Coffee in the morning. Event space at night. Great lighting. Really modern. You'll love it. You've got to be kidding me. Nope. You can't do that. I laughed. Pretty sure I can. But hey, feel free to file a formal complaint. Maybe Mom and Dad can write a letter of concern on your behalf. He was fuming, I could hear it in his tight voice. This is our home. Correction, I said calmly. It's my old home. You're just the latest tenant. He hung up. I stared at the screen, then opened the manila folder in my desk drawer. Inside, the original deed. The one my parents removed my name from at 18, without telling me. I found out years later, reviewing public records for a different property. Just one more quiet cut I'd swallowed. But I hadn't forgotten. The next step was the neighborhood association. Or rather, the lack of one. The neighborhood had an HOA in the 70s, but it dissolved in a messy 2009 legal battle. Paperwork was never reinstated. Meaning, no architectural restrictions, no design codes, no local board to vote on what I could build. Most assumed it still existed, but assumptions are the playground of the unprepared. Chloe reached out next. An Instagram message, as if we were just two business owners chatting over kombucha. Hey Noah, hope you're doing well. Just wondering if you'd be open to a quick chat about the new project. We're concerned about privacy and would love to collaborate on a solution. Let me know. I didn't reply. She hadn't reached out when I was uninvited from the wedding. Hadn't reached out when Sarah erased me from the guest list. Hadn't reached out when they gave away the only home I ever knew. But now that her view was threatened, now it was time to collaborate. I printed the message and tacked it to my bulletin board. A few days later, the real escalation began. My father called. He tried to be diplomatic. Noah, he said, we need to talk man-to-man. I almost choked on my coffee. He invited me to lunch, a neutral steakhouse, dim lights, water in glass bottles. I showed up in a charcoal blazer, open collar. He was already seated. No handshake, no smile. You're making a scene, he said immediately. Nice to see you too, Dad. You're not seriously putting a business behind the house. Not just a business. A brand. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing. He leaned in. Do you have any idea what this looks like? I do. He blinked. It looks like a man who built something from the ground up and decided not to let people who cut him out pretend he's invisible anymore. His jaw clenched. We're asking you respectfully to reconsider. Like you asked me to leave at 18? Or like you asked the notary to take my name off the deed? That shut him up. I didn't come here for a fight, he said finally. You came here to protect your narrative. Silence. Then he made a mistake. He reached across the table, hand on mine, and said, Noah, this could have been yours. If you just stayed in line. I stared at him, then pulled my hand back. That's the problem, I said quietly. You think I wanted to be in your line? I was never in your line. I was building my own. The waiter arrived for our order. I stood up instead. No need. We're done here. He didn't stop me. Back at my office, I called Vivian. Let's move up the schedule, I said. We're breaking ground next month. She didn't ask why. She just said, let's make it loud. And we would. But not just with concrete and steel. No, I had one last card to play. Because in that same manila folder, behind the deed, behind the city permits, behind the architectural plans, was something else. Something my parents had completely forgotten about. A handwritten letter, dated 10 years ago, from Eleanor. It began, Noah, if you're reading this, it means your parents failed you again. It ended with a gift I hadn't used yet. A key. Not to a house, but to a truth that would shake everything they thought they'd hidden. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's paperwork. Sometimes it's a signature. And sometimes, it's a key. Let me take you back. That letter from Eleanor, tucked in the back of the folder, it wasn't something I opened right away. She'd given it to me the day I left home at 18, slipping it into my backpack without a word. Don't open this unless you really need it, she'd said. I assumed it was encouragement, or a family recipe. I left it sealed, moving it from drawer to drawer for years, thinking one day I'd read it when I had the emotional bandwidth. I finally opened it the night I walked out of that steakhouse. The envelope was thin, faded. Inside, a single handwritten page, and a small brass key. The letter began, Noah, if you're reading this, then something's happened. Maybe something painful. I want you to know I always saw you. I always loved you for who you are, not who your parents expected you to be. You were never the problem. They were. This key, it continued, opens a safety deposit box. I've been adding to it since the day you were born. My heart stopped. She explained that when I was a baby, she'd set aside a small savings account in my name, separate from Liam's college fund and the family estate. Quietly, privately, she'd intended to give it to me at 21. But after seeing how my parents treated me when I left, she changed her mind. Held on to it, hidden. She worried they'd manipulate me, or worse, use it against me. The key was for a deposit box at a small regional bank 3 towns over. Instructions were simple: go alone, keep your mouth shut, use it only when ready. I stared at that key for a long time. The next morning, I drove out early. The bank manager glanced at the letter, then nodded with surprising familiarity. Mrs. Turner was a very loyal client, she said, guiding me down a hallway lined with security doors. She told me you might come someday. The deposit box wasn't huge, but what was inside stopped me cold. Cash, a stack of government bonds, several documents, a second key, this one labeled Unit 7A, Cornerstone Storage, and finally, a manila envelope labeled Deed, Parcel 17. It took me a minute to understand. Eleanor hadn't just saved money. She had purchased land. Land I didn't even know she owned. Parcel 17. I drove straight to City Hall, pulled the records. There it was, a sliver of land on the other side of Liam and Chloe's house, just 20 feet wide, but running the entire length of their fence line. A legally separate lot, zoned individually. Essentially, the other side of their property. So now I owned both, front yard, backyard, left side, right side. The house my parents gifted them wasn't boxed in. It was boxed out. They had no idea. And that's when the real fun began. Step 1, fencing. I filed for permits to erect decorative privacy fencing. First on the back lot I already owned, then on the newly discovered Parcel 17. Black slatted aluminum, 12 feet high, completely opaque. Within weeks, crews were installing panels along both ends of the house, blocking natural light, creating a canyon effect around their backyard. Their forever home suddenly felt like a storage unit. Chloe posted a passive-aggressive Instagram story: "Some people have no respect for aesthetics." I didn't respond. I just adjusted the final fence panel so it perfectly reflected sunlight into their master bedroom window every morning between 6:45 and 7:15. Step 2, the atrium. Construction began shortly after the fencing. Bright trucks, loud machines, contractors shouting over radios, every day from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days a week. The noise ordinance allowed it, and I ensured we followed every rule to the letter. My lawyer even sent the city inspector a holiday basket. Chloe called Vivian to complain. Vivian told her she didn't take orders from influencer brides with boundary issues. When they tried filing noise complaints, the city sent back notices. My company had full commercial rights and was well within construction hours. Step 3, the mailbox. This one was petty, but deeply satisfying. Using the other parcel, I registered a new address ending in the same number sequence as theirs, just one digit off. Same street, nearly identical address. I then sent myself packages, documents, marketing materials in large branded envelopes, with confidential stamps and real estate letterheads. Naturally, a few pieces accidentally ended up in their mailbox. One evening, I drove past and saw Liam pacing the sidewalk, a crumpled envelope in hand, his jaw clenched. He shouted something at one of the workers, who just smiled and handed him a business card. Step 4, the reveal. 6 months into construction, just before the venue opened, I hosted a private developer's preview. Catered, soft jazz, press invitations sent to select community leaders, local influencers, and yes, Eleanor. None to my parents. None to Liam. None to Chloe. But I knew they'd come anyway. Curiosity always overpowers pride. Sure enough, as guests arrived, I saw my father lurking by the hedges, pretending he was just passing through. Chloe walked by twice, sunglasses on, casually snapping photos with her phone. Liam didn't show, probably too proud or too furious. Eleanor looked radiant. She pulled me aside after the ribbon cutting, holding my arm with a proud, trembling grip. "I didn't think you'd use the key," she whispered. "I didn't think I'd need to," I said. She nodded. "They always thought you were the quiet one, the soft one. But you were just patient." "Patience is power," I said. "They taught me that without meaning to." The atrium opened to glowing reviews. We hosted 2 weddings the first month, 3 the second. Bookings filled for the entire year. A luxury wedding blog listed it as one of the top 10 chicest hidden venues in the Pacific Northwest. Chloe's own wedding venue got bumped off the list. Poetic. But I wasn't done. Because Liam and Chloe still owned the house. But now, surrounded by floodlights, foot traffic, and the constant hum of wine bar chatter, it wasn't the tranquil retreat they'd envisioned. They tried to sell, but buyers weren't biting. Too noisy, they said. Too close to a commercial property. Property values had dipped. Not dramatically, just enough to sting. The house that was once an untouchable legacy now sat stale on the market for 6 months. Finally, they lowered the price twice, then a third time. And then I made them an offer, below asking, all cash, through another shell company. Chloe refused, calling it insulting. But Liam knew. He knew what I was doing. He knew I was the shadow creeping along the edges of everything they built. He tried to hold the line, but holding the line costs money. Eventually, they needed out. 6 weeks later, the offer was accepted. The house. My house. Mine again. They didn't know until the final paperwork closed, until a new deed was filed, until the for sale sign came down and a no trespassing sign went up. I never planned to live there, but I didn't tear it down. Instead, I turned it into a community center for kids aging out of the foster system, free financial literacy classes, resume workshops, transitional housing. I called it the Turner House. The day the banner went up, Sarah drove by. She didn't come inside. She just sat in her car across the street, staring at the sign. I saw her through the window. She looked older than I remembered. Smaller. She didn't smile. Neither did I. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived. No return address. No greeting. Just, I didn't realize what I'd lost until I saw your name on the deed. I hope you find peace. Mom. I folded the letter and placed it in the same folder that once held the key. Then I locked it away. Because this story, this chapter, it's finished. As for the house, the legacy, the silence they tried to bury me with, I built something louder, something permanent. This time, they couldn't erase me. They had to live with the echo. Do you think I went too far?